All right, welcome to another Affinity photo tutorial. It's been a while since I did one. I was in the process of moving, but let's jump right into this one. Today we're going to be creating this dimensional holographic HUD, kind of like a portal effect or whatever, but so let's go ahead and get going. Let's start off with a new document and we'll go 1920 by 1080. And the first thing we need to do is come over here and create a blank pixel layer. And for right now, we're just going to go ahead and flood fill it with black. And next step is we're going to create our shapes that will create our dimensional HUD. So let's start off by bringing in some grid lines so that we can work with the center. Let's start off with the donut tool. And we'll come over here and make sure it clicks into the center, hold Command and Shift, and we're going to drag out our first shape. We're going to make it as big as the screen for right now, as big as the document, and bring that inner radius out to where we have kind of a smaller ring there. We'll click off. Now to add some dimension to this, we're going to add in some cutouts to it. So to do that, we're going to come and select the pie tool. And same thing, we're going to let it snap into the center there. Command and Shift, we're going to drag it out so that it goes almost all the way up to that. And we'll drag out a pie shape. And with snapping turned on, you'll see that it automatically is equidistant on both sides. So now let's take this, the whole radius, and we're going to just bring it up right about there. Now we need to duplicate the shape around our donut. So we're going to use the Move Duplicate tool for this. With the section of the pie selected, we'll hit Enter, bring up our Move Duplicate tool. We'll check off Duplicate. And we're going to rotate, and for this we're going to rotate 120 degrees because that will break this up into thirds. And then once we got that where we want it, we're just going to increase the number of copies to 2 and then click OK. And now to cut these out of the bottommost donut is we'll click the top, shift click down to the donut, come over to Layer, and then we're going to come down to Geometry and we're just going to hit Subtract. And so that's created our cutouts for that. So now what we need to do is create a middle layer that will kind of mimic this or fit into this. So again, we're going to come down to the donut tool, come in here to the center, Command and Shift. Let's drag this one out to about here. And again, we're going to kill that inner radius some right about there. And we're going to go back to our pie tool. And this time we're going to create basically the same shape, but we're going to go a little bit bigger than that circle. And you'll see what we're doing here in a second. So we're just going to keep that just to the inside of that. Bring this around to the other side, and it will snap in place. This time we have to make sure that we bring this whole radius up just beyond this because we want it to create a unified shape. So now invoking the Move Duplicate tool again by hitting Enter. Again, we're going to hit Duplicate, and we are going to rotate again 120 degrees, and then increase our number of copies to 2. Click OK. And this time what we'll do is we'll select our donuts and come over to Layer, and this time instead of subtracting, we're going to add these together. So now we've got a nice inner ring that matches that outer ring. All right, so let's try something a little bit different on this one. Let's use the cog tool on this. So we'll come to the cog tool, kind of a gear looking tool. Snap into the center here, Command Shift, let's drag it out, and let's increase the number of teeth on this one quite a bit. Pretty good right there. And then let's grab the whole radius, bring it up, and let's drag that inner radius up too. Let's get just the edges there so we have smaller teeth and a bigger body. And that looks okay like that. And there's no adding or subtracting to this. We did it all with the cog tool. And now let's make a little bit of an array on the inside. So this we're going to do a little bit differently. Let's come over and select the let's select the trapezoid tool. And we're going to come over here, drag out our trapezoid, and let's center it horizontally on our document. Now for this one we need to move the pivot point to the center of the document because by default it's in the center of the shape. So let's come over here and enable our transform origin. We'll grab that and drag it right down and snap it into the center of our document. And you guessed it, right now we're going to hit enter. For our move duplicate tool, we'll duplicate, and then we're going to rotate this around. And let's rotate this around. Let's go 30 degrees with this. And then we'll increase our number of copies to 11. Click OK. And now let's group all these trapezoids together. So we'll shift click them, group them, and just to save some memory on the box here, we will go ahead and rasterize and trim those. And then the last thing we're going to do is just put a cap here. We'll do that with just the ellipse tool. Come here and grab the ellipse tool, come into the center, Command Shift, and we'll drag it out. Okay. So we've created our basic shapes that we need for this. So what we'll do now is let's go ahead and give these a little bit of color real quickly. So we'll start off with our outer ring. Let's rename these real quick. Okay, there we go. Got a little bit of naming convention there so we can see what we're doing and we won't get confused. So let's start off with this outer ring here. We'll come to Layer Effects and we'll start off with a color overlay. And let's change the color overlay to kind of like a light blue. That looks pretty good. And let's give it a little bit of an outer glow. For the time being, we'll just make that outer glow kind of white like that. And real quickly, what we can do now is just drag this layer effect up to the middle ring, open it up, and we're going to change the color just a little bit. So let's change the color on this one to make it like, kind of like a purpley color. And these are, completely up to you, whatever you want to do. We'll leave the outer glow right about where it's at for right now. Let's move up to the cog and we'll open that up. We'll change the color overlay on that to something a little bit different. Maybe bring the outer glow down on that a little bit, bring the intensity down, bring the radius up. And we're gonna have to adjust these a little bit later on anyway. We'll drag that up to the trapezoids next. Open that up and we'll give these a different color as well. And then last but not least, we'll hit our center cap. All right, so now that we've given them some color, we need to skew these into, make them look like they're in 3D space. So the way I would start with this is kind of use this center line as a guide. Let's grab the outer ring first. And this, we're not going to mess around with it too much. We're just going to kind of drag it down to where it's just about even with the top of that, or the inside of it is even with the top of that center line. And then we'll grab the middle ring and we'll kind of do the same thing, bring it down, cog, the trapezoids, and finally the ellipse. And so now we need to create a little bit of a background here so that we can see what we're doing. Let's go ahead and group these together for right now because we're going to be able to move those a little bit later on. So let's turn those off for right now and let's create a background. So on this pixel layer here, it is black. Let's go ahead and put a gradient on there. So let's start from top to bottom here, and we'll grab this top color. Let's make it a blue. And for right now, we're going to leave the bottom black on that. And we need to create a floor as well. So for the floor, what I like to do is grab a rectangle tool, and we'll just drag out a rectangle here, and we will give that a gradient as well. And so since this is the black wall, back wall, we'll make that a darker blue. So now the next thing we're going to do is create our grid. Our grid is going to give us a little bit more dimension and delineate our floor a little bit more. Let's grab our pen tool. Let's turn the fill off on that. And let's make the stroke kind of like a light blue for now. Let's make our stroke roughly about, let's make it at 1.5 pixels. And so we're going to click in the top left-hand corner of the document, come down to the bottom and click. And so we've got a nice straight line there. And you guessed it, we're going to do the same thing. We're going to use the Move Duplicate tool here. Click Duplicate. Horizontally, let's come over like about 80 pixels or so. And then we're just going to increase the number of copies till we cover the screen. And then click OK. And then let's go ahead and group those lines together. And for our sake, we're just going to go ahead and rasterize and trim those as well. And we'll duplicate that layer. And we're just going to flip it 90 degrees. And then by holding Command and Option, we're just going to drag it out this way. All right, we're going to take both of those layers now and group those together. And we will rasterize and trim that as well. Alrighty, so what we're going to do with this is we're going to take this layer and we're going to move it up to where it's sitting right on top. That'll be our back wall. And we'll duplicate this layer again, Command J, and we'll bring it down here above our rectangle. And now this time we're going to move it down to match up with this. And let's rasterize and trim that. And now what we're going to do to this to create our floor layer is we're just going to come over to the perspective tool and we're just going to grab these and drag them out. And you can make this pretty much any size you want, but just to create that floor look. And we'll accept that. All right, so they're kind of bright right now. So also let's get rid of these guides because they are a little confusing there. So go to View, Show Guides, and get rid of those. So now let's blend these lines into our background a little bit more. Why don't we change the blending mode to like soft light there, and maybe the same thing up here, soft light. So they're more subtle in the background. Let's turn on our HUD group again, and you can see how it's really bright. What I would do here is number one, I would move the group up just a little bit. And now individually, we can take these elements and move them around a little bit. So let's go ahead and take the ellipse. I'm just going to use the upper arrow key and raise it up some. We'll come to the trapezoids, do the same thing with that. Cog, let's bring that up, and we'll bring the middle ring up a little bit like that. Next, what we'd like to do is create a little bit of transparency here because theoretically on a hologram you'd be able to see through it. So let's start off with the outer ring here. Let's bring the opacity down to about 80% on that. We'll come to the middle ring. Maybe on this one we'll bring it down to like 75. Come to the cog, 70. Trapezoids, we'll stay with 70 on those as well. And then finally the ellipse, we'll bring that down to 70. So now if you're looking, we can kind of see through our shapes to the shapes below if they were stacked. Let's try to lift this a little bit off the floor. So to do that, first thing we need to do is create a little bit of a light source underneath it. So let's come just below the outer ring and we'll add in a blank pixel layer. And let's reset our colors. We'll come to our brush tool, make sure that we are painting with white, and we've got a flow of 100 and a hardness of 0. Let's make this brush nice and big, like that. That looks pretty good. And we're just going to give it a nice pop here. And then using Command and Option, let's symmetrically drag that out a little bit and give it a little bit more here. That's pretty bright, so let's bring the opacity down on that a little bit. Just want a hint of it there. And now what we can do is we can also add in some drop shadows underneath these, but the way I'm going to do that, instead of adding it into the layer effects, let's just grab this outer ring, which is the bottom one here. We're going to duplicate it, Command J. We'll come to the bottommost one here and go into layer effects. Let's turn off outer glow, and we'll come to the color overlay and make it completely black. And we're going to size it up just a little bit. So Command and Option and drag out to the side, drag it down this way a little bit, and let's give it a little bit of a Gaussian blur like that. And we can still move it down some. The farther we get it away from the circle, the more depth it has. We'll do the same thing with the middle ring. We'll select it, duplicate it, grab the lowermost one, go into its layer effects, turn off the outer glow, come to the color overlay, make it black, add in a Gaussian blur. Let's go ahead and size it up just a little bit. And we will move that down. And we're also going to bring that whole layer down below the outer ring so the shadow doesn't cast onto the outer ring. That is a little bit, let's check that. Let's come to that layer effect. Actually, let's come to the Gaussian blur. Bring it down a little bit so it's not quite so blurry. And then we'll also size it down a little bit this way. And then you would just, repeat for the other layers. I don't want to make this too long. And then add in any other elements that you want. You can put in energy beams. You can do whatever you want, but you can see what you can do with shapes here. And reasonably quickly, you can create some depth and dimension and fake your 3D and fake your hologram effect. I know this was kind of a long one, but I just wanted to share those concepts with you. If you got any value out of this, please throw me a like or think about subscribing to the channel. And until next time, peace. Talk to you later. Bye.